From the grave he rose, with a mighty triumph for his foes. He arose a victor from the dark domain, and he lives forever with his saints to reign. Oh, he lives, Christ Jesus lives today. He walks with me, he talks with me, along life's narrow way. He lives, salvation to impart. You ask me how I know he lives. He lives within my heart.
People think of us doesn't really matter because Jesus gave himself for me. And God knows your name this morning, and he wants to surprise you this morning. Maybe think about the sequence of events on that Easter Sunday so many years ago, that resurrection morning so many years ago. Think about the surprise. God, that's how God works, isn't it? He always lifts us up. He always lets us know that he knows our name. That he knows exactly where we are. When it seems like no one else cares, God cares about us. Mary Magdalene went to the tomb and saw the stone had been removed from the entrance. So she came running to Simon Peter and the other disciple and the one Jesus loved, and said, they've taken the Lord out of the tomb and we don't know where they've put him. But when they looked up, they saw that the stone, which was very large, had been rolled away. So John has a perspective of this story. He records some things. Mark has a perspective of this story, and he records some things. And I believe at this point, Mary Magdalene saw the stone was rolled away and ran to get Peter. Here, see the place where they laid him. Verse 7, but go and tell his disciples and Peter, he knows our name. What's the last thing we know about Peter when we read this? Peter had denied Jesus not once, not twice, but 3 times. And the angel says, go and tell his disciples and Peter, he is going ahead of you into Galilee. There you'll see him just as he told you. Verse 8, trembling and bewildered, the women went out, fled from the tomb. They said nothing to anyone because they were afraid. That's Mark chapter 16, verses 1 through 8. So the 4 gospel writers add various details. They all mesh perfectly together based on the text, and there's a flow to this text. And the story is quick becoming a fast-paced, chaotic day where you have people running and people running ahead of others. And if you read all 4 texts, you see John chapter 20, verses 2 through 10. So she came running to Simon Peter and the other disciple, the one Jesus loved, that's John, the writer of the Gospel of John, and said, they've taken the Lord out of the tomb, we don't know where they put him. So Peter and the other disciples start for the tomb, and they're both running. Now I picture in my mind, Mary Magdalene has taken off to find Peter and the disciples. She tells John and Peter, they start running. Then they meet up with these other lady who have a message from an angel, and John runs on ahead. Both were running. He surprised him that day, and now we come to a weeping Mary Magdalene sitting by the tomb, thinking about what had happened, not hearing first person from the angel, just seeing some disciples run to the tomb and still there wondering what was going on. And there's a change that takes place in her heart. We'll see it here in the text. The change that takes place is the man that she watched die earlier in the weekend now meets with her. Let's pick it up in verse 11. Now Mary stood outside the tomb crying. As she wept, she bent over to look into the tomb and saw two angels in white seated there where Jesus' body had been, one at the head, the other at the foot. They asked her, "Woman, why are you crying?" And she answers, "They've taken my Lord away, and I don't know where they put him." She didn't know where Jesus was. Verse 14 is one of the best verses in Scripture. If you like a surprise, verse 15 should be your banner, your standard. At this, she turned around and saw Jesus standing there. But she didn't realize it was him. He asked her, "Woman, why are you crying? Who is it that you're looking for?" I think this is comical. Thinking he was the gardener, she said, "Sir, if you've carried him away, tell me where you'll put him and I will get him." Jesus said to her, "Mary." Jesus knew her name. Jesus knows your name. And when Jesus said to her, "Mary," she turned towards him and cried out in Aramaic, "Rabboni," which means teacher. When he said her name, she recognized his voice. All of heaven must have screamed out at that moment when Mary heard Jesus say her name. I believe all the angels of heaven screamed surprise to Mary. When was the last time he surprised you with hope and joy and a fresh start? And when he called your name, Jesus knows your name. Jesus calls your name today and every day. I love to celebrate the resurrection on Easter, but we really should celebrate the grace of God and the cross and the resurrection every Sunday. How will we respond when Jesus stands at the door of our heart and our life? How will we respond? And that's a question for each and every one of us this morning.